Billionaire falls for his humble maid, not knowing she's an undercover agent. What happened next will leave you speechless. His hand gripped hers like she was the only thing keeping him from falling apart, but in 3 seconds he would see the FBI badge hidden in her apron pocket, and everything they built together would explode into a million pieces. She never wanted it to end like this, not with tears, not with love turning into the sharpest weapon that would cut them both in half. But sometimes the heart doesn't ask permission before it destroys everything. Let me take you back to where this beautiful disaster started, because what happened between a billionaire and his maid wasn't just a love story. It was a war between truth and lies, and nobody was ready for how it would end. The gates of the stone mansion were huge, like something out of a fairy tale, except this wasn't a fairy tale. This was a golden trap that looked like paradise, but hid shadows deeper than midnight. The moment Maya Rodriguez stepped through those gates in a crisp blue maid uniform, she knew the role demanded more than clean floors. It demanded her courage, her silence, and maybe even her heart. Maya wasn't there to polish chandeliers. She was an undercover FBI agent. Her target, Alexander Stone, handsome, adored, and powerful beyond reason. The file said he was laundering money through shell companies. The orders were clear. Get inside, find proof, bring him down. 30 days, in and out. Easy. Yet nothing about this assignment felt easy. Director Morrison, her boss, was unusually intense during the briefing. His office had smelled like burnt coffee and something else. Desperation, maybe, or fear disguised as authority. Daily reports, Rodriguez. No improvising, he said, jaw tight, eyes colder than the office lights. Do not let him get into your head. She nodded, but the way he repeated daily reports felt like a warning wrapped in worry. She tucked the feeling away, alongside all the other instincts that made her good at her job. Maya had grown up in a small apartment where walls were thin and dreams were thinner. Her father was a cop who died in the line of duty when she was 12. She remembered his badge on the kitchen table, how heavy it felt when she held it, how it seemed to pulse with purpose. That badge became her North Star, the reason she endured the Academy's brutal mornings, the reason she could lie without flinching, the reason she believed justice was worth the cost. The mansion swallowed her steps in marble silence. Chandeliers hung like frozen waterfalls of glass. Floors gleamed so bright she could see her own nerves in the shine. Everywhere she looked, gold whispered, "I win." The air smelled expensive, like leather, old books, and flowers that cost more than her monthly rent. Paintings stared from walls with eyes that judged. Sculptures stood like frozen witnesses to secrets. "You're the new maid?" The voice came from behind her, smooth and close. Maya turned, and her heart forgot its job. Alexander Stone stood there, like he had walked out of a dream someone spent a fortune on. Tall, dark, perfect hair that looked soft even from a distance. Eyes blue like clean ocean water, the kind that makes you want to dive in before you remember you can't swim. A suit that said money louder than any bragging could. But it was his smile that caught her off guard. Warm, genuine. Like he actually wanted to know her. "Yes, sir, I'm Maya," she said, steady voice fighting wild heartbeat. "Maya," he repeated, tasting the sound like it was rare and precious. "Beautiful name. Spanish?" "My grandmother's choice," she said, which was true. The best lies always had truth woven through them. "Call me Alexander." He stepped closer. She could smell his cologne now, cedar and something citrus, bright and grounding at the same time. "I don't like sir in my own home, makes life feel cold." "Okay, Alexander." He smiled like he had already won something important. "I think you and I are going to be great friends." "Maya." Warning bells screamed in her head. Targets weren't supposed to be charming. They weren't supposed to make your stomach flip like a roller coaster. They weren't supposed to look at you like you mattered. They were supposed to be easy to hate. But Alexander Stone wasn't easy to hate. And that was the first problem. Maya told herself she had it under control. She'd done undercover work before. Pretend, blend, vanish with evidence. But Alexander didn't treat her like background. He asked about her life, where she grew up, if she missed home, what she dreamed about when the lights were off and nobody was watching. And then he did the strangest thing of all. He listened. Most rich people drifted past staff like furniture, necessary but invisible. Alexander saw her, really saw her. He remembered that she took her coffee black, that she hummed when she thought no one was listening, that she paused too long before answering questions about family. He had his own ghosts, she learned. His parents died in a plane crash when he was 19. The company, the fortune, the mansion, all of it landed on him before he knew how to carry weight that heavy. "You ever feel like you're living someone else's life?" he asked one morning while she arranged flowers in the East Library. Sunlight poured through windows tall as churches. Dust motes danced like tiny prayers. "Sometimes," she admitted, "I built this empire because it's what my father would have wanted. But some days I wonder who I would have been if I'd been allowed to choose." His voice carried a loneliness that money couldn't buy its way out of. Maya felt something crack inside her chest, a small fissure in the wall she'd built between mission and heart. That night Maya texted Sarah Chen, her best friend and partner since the academy. Sarah was the kind of person who brought coffee without being asked and knew when silence was the kindest response. Going dark inside, if anything feels off at HQ, pull the thread. Sarah's reply came quick. Always, and seriously, "Don't let the castle prince charm you." Maya didn't answer. She didn't want to admit the prince already had. "You seem sad sometimes," Alexander said days later while she dusted his library shelves. Books lined the walls like leather-bound soldiers standing guard over forgotten stories. "I'm fine, sir." "Alexander." "No, you're not." He moved closer, gentle, but sure. "You carry something heavy. Like a secret that aches when you breathe. Everyone has problems. True. But not everyone carries them like they're made of stone. You don't have to carry yours alone." Her throat tightened. The worst part of lying wasn't the lie. It was wanting to tell the truth to the one person you shouldn't. It was the way her name sounded different in his voice, softer, like it belonged to someone better than who she was pretending to be. In quiet moments, Maya replayed her briefing. Morrison's tone was wrong, not careful, controlling, not alert, afraid. And he only cared about this one case. Why did one billionaire consume a director's entire attention? The Bureau handled hundreds of cases. What made Alexander Stone worth Morrison's obsession? "Sarah," she whispered into the phone later that night. Standing on the mansion's back terrace where security cameras had blind spots, "Log my check-in off the record." "Off the record?" Sarah said. "That's not like you." "I know. Something about this assignment, it's off. Morrison's too invested, too specific with his questions, too eager." "I'll keep my eyes open," Sarah said. "And Maya, if it smells wrong, don't breathe it." Maya smiled in the dark. "Copy that." The city stretched below like a blanket of lights. Millions of people living lives that didn't require lies. She envied them. Somewhere down there, a couple was having their first date. A child was learning to ride a bike. An old man was remembering his wife. Simple truths. Clean hearts. On a Thursday morning, the house felt too quiet. The kind of quiet that invites you to do something you shouldn't. The staff had the day off. Alexander was in a meeting downtown. Maya slipped a thin tool into the office lock. The click sounded like a promise breaking. Inside, she moved fast. Desk, drawers, files, banking papers, wire transfers, foreign accounts, names that felt like masks. The file looked like proof, except it looked almost too perfect. Like it wanted to be found, like someone had built a stage and was waiting for her to step onto it. Then she saw another folder, plain, unlabeled. It called to her in a way that made her hands cold. Inside were photos, her at the academy, her at graduation, her receiving an award, articles about her cases. Everything he knew. Looking for something? She spun. Alexander stood in the doorway. Calm, sad, not surprised. I can explain. Can you? He closed the door softly, like this deserved quiet. Can you explain why the FBI sent one of their best to clean my floors? Why you smiled at me with a story that wasn't yours? You knew? Since day one, he said. Your background check was too perfect. No past is that polished. I had my security look deeper. They found you. If you knew, why didn't you have me thrown out? Because I'm not the man in your file, he said. And because the moment you walked in, I felt something I haven't felt in years. Like maybe I wasn't alone. He laid another folder on the desk. Someone is moving dirty money through my company. Not me. Someone using me as a shield. I've been trying to trace it quietly. Every time I get close, the trail twists. And then you appeared, sent by a system I don't trust. Why not tell the FBI? Because whoever is doing this has reach. Maybe even inside the bureau. He looked at her with eyes that held too much hope for someone who should have been angry. I didn't turn you in because I wanted to believe that one person in this story was on my side. I don't know what to believe, she whispered. Believe this, he said, voice breaking like glass under pressure. I fell for you, Maya, even while knowing the truth about you. I fell anyway. Her confession left her before she could trap it. I fell for you too. They stared at each other across a desk piled with lies. Then they did the only honest thing left. They chose the same side. 2 weeks, Maya said, her training kicking in even as her heart raced. That's how long I have before my boss demands a result. We use that time to find whoever is doing this to you, and to us. Alexander nodded, relief flooding his features. Then we start now. They worked until the night turned thin, and the city lights felt like stars that had dropped to street level. They opened accounts, followed transfers, traced emails, and found walls where there should have been doors. The more they searched, the more obvious one pattern became. Whoever did this was smart, careful, and very close to law enforcement. Maya's fingers flew across the keyboard, her FBI training proving invaluable. Alexander provided access codes and insider knowledge of his company's structure. Together they made a formidable team, her investigative expertise combined with his intimate understanding of the business world. Look at this, Alexander said around midnight, pointing to a series of transactions. These amounts, they're just below the reporting threshold. Classic structuring. And they all route through the same intermediary, Maya added, following the digital trail. A consulting firm that doesn't seem to do any actual consulting. The pieces were coming together, but the picture they formed was darker than either had imagined. Shell companies within shell companies. Offshore accounts layered like an onion. And at the center of it all, a routing number that led back to a government account. Sarah, Maya whispered into the phone at 1 a.m., voice tight with urgency. Run a silent audit on the internal case routing related to Stone. If you can do it without logging your own credentials, do it. Already started, Sarah said, her tone grave. Maya, Morrison asked me 3 times today if you'd reported. He's never that curious. Something's wrong at the top. Keep digging. And Sarah, watch your back. You too. Over the following days, the mansion transformed from a gilded cage into a war room. Papers covered every surface of Alexander's private study. Coffee cups multiplied like evidence of their desperation. Sleep became a luxury neither could afford. "Why do you do this job?" Alexander asked one night, both of them surrounded by paper mountains, eyes red from staring at screens. "Because someone has to stand between bad people and the people they hurt, even when it costs everything." He took her hand, his touch gentle despite the calluses from years of hard work that no one expected from a billionaire. "You are the bravest person I've ever met. And you are not the man in my file," she said, squeezing back. "You're the man I didn't know I wanted to believe in." Their hands didn't let go for a long time. In that moment, surrounded by evidence of corruption and conspiracy, they found something rare and true, a connection that transcended duty and danger. At 6 a.m. on the 14th day, Sarah called. Her voice shook in a way Maya had never heard before. "Maya, listen carefully. I know who's framing Alexander. It's Director Morrison." Everything inside Maya went still. The world narrowed to Sarah's voice and the sound of her own heartbeat thundering in her ears. "He's been siphoning money from high-value cases for years," Sarah continued, words tumbling out fast. "He used Stone's company as camouflage. When Alexander's internal audits got close to discovering the breach, Morrison assigned you to build a clean case against Stone and bury the truth. I filed a hidden search to confirm my suspicions, but he saw it. Teams are being sent to pick you both up. You've got minutes, not hours." Maya ran. "We have to go," she told Alexander, breathless in the kitchen's cold morning light. "Now, no questions, no packing, just move." He didn't hesitate. Keys, coats, door. The mansion shrank in the rearview mirror like a life they couldn't have, a dream interrupted by reality's harsh alarm. They reached a small apartment in a crowded block. Alexander's quiet place, the one nobody knew about. He'd bought it years ago when the weight of wealth became too heavy, when he needed a space where he could just be Alexander, not Alexander Stone, billionaire heir. It felt normal in the best way. Small table, soft lamp, a view of people living real lives through windows that didn't cost a fortune. Sarah arrived within the hour, carrying boxes and a hard drive like they were the most precious cargo in the world. "Everything we need to take Morrison down," she said, setting them on the table with reverent care. "Financial records, email trails, witness statements I collected quietly. But it has to go to someone he can't touch. Senator Williams, she's been investigating corruption in federal agencies. If she gets this, it goes public and Morrison can't bury it." "There's a problem," Sarah added, her expression grim. "Morrison's telling everyone you two are working together as criminals. If you're caught before we hand this over, he'll frame you both as co-conspirators. He's already started building the narrative, the agent who went rogue and the billionaire who seduced her to his side." "We won't get caught," Maya said with more confidence than she felt. Alexander put his arm around her shoulders. "We've come this far. We finish this together. Before we race into the final act, tell us where you're watching from in the comments. City, country, or the name of the street food you love. And if stories about love, truth, and impossible choices hit your heart, subscribe now so you never miss the next one." Okay? Back to the storm. They planned carefully, knowing they'd only get one chance. Sarah would schedule a private noon meeting with Senator Williams under the guise of discussing campaign finance reform. Maya and Alexander would bring the proof by hand. No email, no cloud, no digital footprint that Morrison could trace or intercept. That night, Alexander stared out at the city lights like they were questions he'd been asking his whole life. "Terrified," Maya whispered, coming to stand beside him. "Not of the law," he said, "of losing you. When this is over, when the dust settles and the truth comes out, what happens to us?" "What do you mean?" When this ends, you'll go back to your badge and your cases. I'll go back to my boardrooms and charity galas. Does what we have fade when we don't need each other to survive? She cupped his face, forcing him to look at her. I fell in love with you while the world was on fire. I won't forget how you held me in the smoke. This isn't just adrenaline or proximity or two people clinging to each other in a storm. This is real. He smiled, fragile and bright like dawn breaking through dark clouds. Whatever happens tomorrow, you're the best thing that ever happened to me. And you taught me the bravest truth, she said. Love doesn't cancel duty. It gives it meaning. It reminds us why we fight. They left for the senator's office early, with Sarah out front as their advance scout, and Maya and Alexander following in a nondescript rental car. The morning was loud with buses and conversations and horns that didn't care about anyone's secrets. Life continued, indifferent to their private war. We're being followed, Sarah said over the phone, calm but urgent. Black SUV, 3 cars back, it's sticking close. Morrison, Alexander said. We split up, Maya decided, her training taking over. We go on foot. Sarah, lead them away. We'll take the back entrance to the building. Copy that. Be careful. At the next light, they slipped out of the car and melted into the crowd, past a bakery breathing warm sugar into the cold air. Past a street violinist playing something that tried to turn panic into music. Past faces that never knew how close they were to witnessing a story that would dominate headlines for weeks. The back entrance guard checked his list. Sarah had worked her magic and let them through without question. Elevator, 14th floor, hallway that smelled like coffee and ambition, room 1421. They burst into Senator Williams's office, breath and fear shaking hands in their chests. Agent Rodriguez. Mr. Stone, the senator said, steady as a lighthouse in a storm. She was a woman in her 50s with steel-gray hair and eyes that had seen too many lies to be fooled. You look like the truth finally found you. We have evidence, Maya said, placing the hard drive on the polished desk. A lot of it. It documents a conspiracy. The door behind them opened hard, bouncing off the wall with a sound like a gunshot. Director Morrison stepped in with several agents, their presence making the air feel thinner, the room smaller. Maya Rodriguez, Alexander Stone. You're both under arrest, Morrison said, his voice carrying false authority. Enough drama. Hands where we can see them. Senator, Alexander said calmly, eyes only on her. There's a drive in my jacket pocket. It documents Morrison's theft and the systematic frame job he constructed against me. Please, just look at it before you make any decisions. Don't touch that, Morrison snapped. He's lying. They're both lying. This is exactly what I warned you about, an agent gone rogue. You don't give orders in my office, Director, Senator Williams said evenly. Already reaching for Alexander's pocket, she plugged the drive into her computer with practiced efficiency. The room fell into a listening silence broken only by the soft hum of electronics and the click of a mouse. Clicks. Scrolls. A frown that tightened into anger, then hardened into cold fury. Agents, she said, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. Place Director Morrison in custody. Now. What? Morrison's voice jumped an octave. You can't. Fraud. Abuse of power. Obstruction of justice. Corruption of federal investigations. She listed, eyes flat with certainty. It's all here. Your signatures. Your offshore accounts. Wire transfers you personally authorized. The metadata alone is damning, but you were sloppy. You got comfortable. The agents looked at one another, a moment of confusion that stretched like taffy. Then Sarah stepped through the doorway, badge visible, voice steady and strong. I corroborated the data independently. He's been using Bureau resources to hide personal theft for years. I have 3 other agents ready to testify. It's over, sir. A long beat of silence. Then the sound of handcuffs clicking, the most beautiful sound Maya had heard in weeks. Morrison sputtered, his face cycling through shock, rage, and finally bitter acceptance. He looked at Maya with a last desperate try at cruelty. You threw away your career for a man who'll never truly love someone like you. A maid. That's all you'll ever be to his world. Alexander stepped in front of her, his body a shield, his voice soft but unshakable. Someone like her? Brave. Honest. Brilliant. The kind of person who risks everything for truth. That's the only kind of person I want, and she was never just a maid. She was always extraordinary. Maya's fear, which had lived in her ribs for weeks like a permanent resident, finally packed its bags and moved out. Outside the office, sirens were just sounds again, not threats. For the first time in too long, silence didn't feel like danger. It felt like peace. The bureau called Maya a hero in public ceremonies that made her uncomfortable. The bureau called Sarah unbreakable and promoted her to lead the anti-corruption task force. The bureau called corruption by its name and scrubbed hard, implementing new oversight protocols. Morrison went away for 15 years in a federal prison where his former colleagues would ensure he received no special treatment. The stolen funds, millions of dollars skimmed from seizures and settlements, returned home to victims who had almost given up believing in justice. Alexander cleared his name, not with press statements or expensive lawyers grandstanding on courthouse steps, but with patience and dignity. He shook hands with people who had doubted him, testified in 3 separate hearings, and told them he understood their suspicion. He implemented new financial controls in his company and hired an independent ethics board. Trust, he learned, was rebuilt one honest action at a time. 6 months later, they stood on the mansion balcony in a sky that looked painted by a kind child who loved warm colors, oranges and pinks and golds that had nothing to do with money. The chandelier inside threw soft light around the hallway, the same way it had on her first day, only now it felt like a welcome and not a warning. You ever think about how we met? Alexander asked, arms around her waist, chin resting on her shoulder. Sometimes, Maya said, leaning back into his warmth. It was wild. Not exactly a normal rom-com origin story. You were sent to destroy me. You saved me, she said, smiling at the memory, from becoming just a badge with no heart behind it. We saved each other then. We did. He kissed her forehead with tenderness that still surprised her. Best assignment the Bureau ever gave you? Best assignment love ever gave me, she said, turning in his arms to face him. And the only one I never want to finish. Down in the city, people carried their own quiet wars, against injustice, against loneliness, against the daily grind that threatened to make them forget their dreams. Some of them wondered if truth was worth the trouble, if love was worth the risk. If they could have seen this balcony, 2 people who chose both truth and love, who refused to compromise either, they might have believed a little more. Truth is always worth it. Love is always worth it. And sometimes the person you're sent to destroy becomes the one who saves you. Sometimes the lie you're living leads you to the most honest thing you'll ever feel. Sometimes you have to risk everything, your career, your safety, your heart, to find out who you really are. Maya Rodriguez learned she was more than her badge. Alexander Stone learned he was more than his fortune. Together, they learned that the bravest thing anyone can do is choose love without abandoning truth, and fight for justice without losing their humanity. Was Maya right to risk everything for love and truth? Or should she have followed orders no matter what? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's argue it out with kindness and respect for different viewpoints. If this story hit your heart, made you feel something real, or reminded you why we tell stories about impossible choices, subscribe to Emotional Stories and tap the bell so you never miss the next roller coaster we build with words.